Rain poured down in sheets, turning the city into a blur of gray and silver. A young woman sat in her old car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a reminder for the interview she'd been preparing months for. This was her chance. A job at one of the top tech companies in the city could change everything. She glanced at the small photo taped to her dashboard. Her toddler son, grinning in his daycare photo. She whispered to herself, "Today's the day." But halfway to the office, the car sputtered. The engine coughed, then died. She turned the key again. Nothing. Panic rose in her chest as she checked the time. 30 minutes left. 4 miles to go. She called a tow truck, but the wait would take too long. Without hesitation, she grabbed her bag, stuffed her resume and laptop inside, and stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked through her blazer instantly. Her shoes, cheap flats she'd polished carefully that morning, squelched in the flooded sidewalk. People under umbrellas stared as she jogged past, her hair plastered to her face. She didn't care. She'd faced worse than a little rain. Then came the shortcut. A narrow alley behind a construction site, muddy and uneven. She hesitated. Too risky. But time was slipping away. She took a deep breath and hurried forward. Halfway through, her foot caught on a broken pipe. She stumbled, arms flailing, and landed hard in a puddle of thick brown mud. Her knee throbbed. Her white blouse was now streaked with dirt. For a moment she sat there, rain stinging her eyes, fighting the urge to cry. This can't be happening. But then she laughed, a quiet, tired laugh. Of course this would happen today. Life had never cut her any breaks. She'd worked night shifts while studying coding online. She'd saved every penny for her son's daycare. A little mud wasn't going to stop her now. She stood up, wiped her face with her sleeve, and kept running. By the time she reached the sleek glass office building, she was drenched. Her clothes clung to her, dripping muddy water onto the polished lobby floor. The security guard at the door raised an eyebrow. "You lost?" She lifted her chin. "I'm here for the 10 a.m. interview." The guard blinked, then pointed to the elevators. 4th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. She stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, a mess of tangled hair, smudged makeup, and clothes that looked like they'd been through a war. She tried smoothing her skirt, but the mud had dried. Too late. When the doors opened, the receptionist gasped. "Oh my, are you okay?" "I'm here for the interview," the woman said firmly. The receptionist hesitated, then gestured to a chair. "Wait here. I'll let them know." The woman sat, ignoring the whispers of employees walking by. A man in a tailored suit smirked as he passed. A younger woman offered a sympathetic smile. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 10:07 a.m. She was late. Finally, a door opened. A stern-faced interviewer looked her up and down. "Come in." The interview room was cold. 3 people sat at a long table, their eyes widening as she entered. One man leaned back in his chair, frowning. "You're aware this is a professional setting?" She forced her voice steady. "Yes, and I'm here to prove I'm the best person for this job." The interview began. Technical questions flew at her. Coding languages, project, management, problem solving. She answered each one calmly, her confidence growing. Her hands, still smudged with dirt, gestured as she explained a recent project she'd built, an app to help single parents find affordable childcare. One interviewer interrupted. "Interesting. But how do you handle high-pressure environments?" She paused. Images flashed in her mind. Late-night study sessions while her son slept, debugging code during her lunch breaks, the panic of this very morning. "Pressure isn't new to me," she said quietly. "I don't crack. I adapt." Before the interviewer could respond, the door swung open. Everyone froze. The CEO stood in the doorway, a woman in her 60s, her sharp gray suit contrasting with the room's tension. Her gaze locked onto the interviewee's muddy clothes. The room held its breath. "What's going on here?" the CEO asked, her voice like steel. The CEO's sharp voice cut through the silence like a knife. All eyes turned to her. the kind of woman who could silence a room with a glance. Her silver hair was pulled back tightly, and her tailored suit screamed authority. For a moment, she stared at the young woman sitting across the table, her gaze lingering on the dried mud caked on the interviewee's sleeves and the damp strands of hair sticking to her forehead. The interview panel shifted uncomfortably. The oldest interviewer, a man with a neatly trimmed beard, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, this candidate arrived late and unprepared. We were just—" The CEO held up a hand, cutting him off. She stepped closer to the table, her heels clicking against the floor. The young woman sat perfectly still, her back straight, hands folded over her mud-streaked portfolio. Inside were printouts of her work, coding projects, app designs, letters of recommendation from freelancing clients. She'd spent weeks polishing every page. Now the edges were warped from rainwater. "Why?" the CEO said slowly. "Are you sitting in my boardroom looking like you've been dragged through a swamp?" The room tensed. The youngest interviewer, a woman in her 30s, winced, but the candidate didn't flinch. She met the CEO's stare head-on. "My car broke down in the rain. I walked the last mile, fell in some mud, didn't want to waste time cleaning up when I could be here instead." The CEO tilted her head. "You think showing up like this is respectful?" "No," the young woman said. Her voice stayed calm, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her portfolio. "But I think proving I can do this job matters more than my clothes. The mud'll wash off. My work won't." A beat of silence. Then, the CEO did something no one expected. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a loud, genuine laugh that made the bearded interviewer drop his pen. "You've got nerve," the CEO said, shaking her head. She pulled out a chair and sat down, ignoring the stunned looks from her employees. "Show me." "Ma'am?" the young woman asked. "Your work. The stuff in that folder." The CEO pointed at the portfolio. "Let's see if you're as good as you think you are." The young woman hesitated, then slid the damp papers across the table. The CEO flipped through them, her sharp eyes scanning lines of code, app interfaces, user testimonials. The panel watched nervously. No one spoke. In the silence, the young woman's mind raced. She thought of her son, probably painting messy pictures at daycare right now. She thought of the nights she'd stayed up coding, teaching herself programming languages while he slept. She'd promised him a better life. This job, health insurance, a steady paycheck, maybe even a 2-bedroom apartment, was the key. The CEO paused on a page. "This childcare app, you built it alone?" "Yes." "Why?" The young woman shrugged. "Because I needed it. Couldn't afford fancy services, so I made one that's free for low-income parents." The CEO's expression didn't change, but her tone softened. "How many users?" 10,000. Mostly single parents, students, people working 2 jobs. One of the interviewers, a man with round glasses, leaned forward. "It's impressive. But this role requires team leadership. What experience do you have managing others?" Before she could answer, the CEO interrupted. "She managed a project that helped 10,000 people. Alone." "What's your team done lately? Another pointless email chain about the office coffee machine?" The man shrank back. The CEO tossed the portfolio onto the table. "You're stubborn. I like that. But stubborn doesn't debug code." She pulled a laptop from her briefcase, opened it, and spun it toward the young woman. "Fix this." On the screen was a piece of glitchy software, a scheduling program the company used internally. The young woman recognized it. She'd read about its bugs in tech forums. Employees complained it crashed daily. She leaned forward, fingers hovering over the keys. The room watched as she scrolled through lines of code, her eyes narrowing. Rain pattered against the windows. "The problem's here," she said finally. "The API integration's a mess. You're using outdated protocols. It's like trying to fit a square plug in a round hole." The CEO raised an eyebrow. "Can you fix it?" "Give me 10 minutes. The panel exchanged glances. The CEO smirked. Clock's ticking. The young woman's hands flew across the keyboard. She forgot about the mud on her clothes, the ache in her knee from her fall. This was her language, the logic of machines. the dance of problem solving. Lines of code rearranged themselves on the screen. 8 minutes later, she sat back. Try it now. The CEO clicked a button. The software loaded instantly. She tested a few commands. No crashes. No spinning wheels. Huh, the CEO said. The bearded interviewer leaned in. That's impossible. Our team's been stuck on this for months. The young woman shrugged. Sometimes you just need fresh eyes. For the first time, the CEO smiled. Not a polite smile, but a real one. The room seemed to exhale. Then, the CEO stood, snapping the laptop shut. We're done here. Panic flashed across the young woman's face. But, you'll hear from HR by tonight, the CEO said, striding toward the door. She paused, glancing back. And next time, take a taxi. The door swung shut behind her. The interviewers stared at the young woman, their earlier disdain, replaced with something like awe. The youngest one grinned. I've never seen her approve anyone that fast. But the young woman barely heard them. Her heart pounded. Was that a yes? She gathered her soggy papers, hands trembling. As she stepped into the elevator, she noticed her reflection again, still muddy, still messy, but now she smiled. The elevator doors closed, leaving the young woman alone with her racing thoughts. Did I really get the job? Her hands shook as she pressed the lobby button. The CEO's words echoed in her mind. You'll hear from HR by tonight. But what did that mean? Approval? Rejection? Her stomach churned. She'd been let down before by promises that sounded too good to be true. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight glinted off puddles in the parking lot. She pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from daycare. Her heart sank. Late pickup. Fee. Again. She hurried to the bus stop, her damp clothes clinging to her skin. That evening, in her tiny apartment, she sat cross-legged on the floor beside her toddler. He stacked colorful blocks while she refreshed her email every 30 seconds. The room smelled of microwave noodles and baby shampoo. Mama, look, her son said, holding up a lopsided tower. Wow, buddy. That's amazing, she said, forcing a smile. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She nearly dropped it answering. Hello? This is HR from Technova, said a cheerful voice. We're thrilled to offer you the position. The room spun. Thrilled. The word felt foreign. She'd only ever been tolerated at past jobs, the quiet coder who worked holidays and never complained. Salary is 30% higher than listed, the HR rep added. The CEO insisted. She gripped the edge of the couch. Her son, sensing her, shock crawled into her lap. Mama okay? She hugged him tight, tears soaking into his curly hair. Yeah, baby. Mama's really okay. The next morning, the CEO stood at her office window, staring at the city below. Memories flickered. Herself, at 25, begging for a loan in a food-stained dress while her newborn slept in a carrier. Back then, no one gave her a chance. Now she had the power to change that. Her assistant knocked. The new hire's paperwork is done, but the team's talking. About what? The CEO asked without turning. Her clothes, the mud, some. Think you've gone soft, the CEO smirked. Tell them I've gone smart. Day one at Technova felt surreal. The young woman arrived early, wearing her only blazer, dry cleaned but still slightly frayed at the cuffs. The lobby security guard recognized her. You're back? Seriously? She held up her new ID badge. Seriously, the guard chuckled. Respect. Upstairs, whispers followed her down the hall. A group of engineers snickered as she passed. Watch out, one muttered. She might track mud on the servers. She kept walking, chin high. Let them talk. Her cubicle was tucked, in a corner beside the copy machine. No welcome note, no team introduction. Just a sticky note on her desk. Fix the scheduling software. ASAP. She booted up her computer. The same glitchy program she'd repaired in her interview popped up. New errors had appeared overnight. She sighed. Of course, by lunchtime she'd rewritten half the code. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, shutting out the world. Until a shadow fell over her desk. The CEO stood there, holding 2 takeout boxes. Eat. I'm fine, eat, the CEO repeated, dropping a box of sushi onto the desk. Starving yourself won't impress anyone here. The young woman hesitated, then took a bite. It was the fanciest meal she'd ever tasted. The CEO leaned against the copy machine. They're testing you, the team. They think I hired you out of pity. Did you? I don't do pity. The CEO's voice hardened. I do strategy. You're better than half the idiots here. Prove it. How? Make them need you. The chance came sooner than expected. At 3 p.m., the office lights flickered. A collective groan rose as computers died. The scheduling software, now tied to every department, crashed. Panic spread. We'll lose the client data, shouted a manager. Someone call it. The young woman stood up. I can fix it. Everyone turned. The same engineer who'd mocked her earlier rolled his eyes. You broke it, didn't you? She ignored him, pushing past the crowd to the server room. The CEO watched silently from her office doorway. Inside the server room, wires hummed like a beehive. The young woman traced the problem to a corrupted update file. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, restoring backups, rewriting commands. 10 minutes later, the light stabilized. A voice crackled over the intercom. Systems, I'm back online. The office erupted in relieved cheers. The young woman emerged, sweaty, but calm. The engineer who doubted her stared at his rebooted screen. How'd you? She tossed him a USB drive. Patch this to prevent repeats, and maybe stop installing random game mods on work devices. His face turned red. The team burst into laughter, this time with her, not at her. That night, as she rocked her son to sleep, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Told you they'd need you. Ishi smiled, tucking the phone away. Outside her window, the city glittered, a little less cold, a little less impossible. Weeks passed and the young woman settled into a rhythm. Mornings began with daycare drop-offs, nights with code and bedtime stories. Her son's crayon drawings now dotted her cubicle, a splash of color in the sea of gray office walls. The team's sneers had faded to nods of respect, though some still kept their distance. One afternoon, the CEO strode into the open office, her presence silencing the room. New client pitch in 2 days, she announced. Their platform's full of security holes. Fix it and we land $1 million contract. Eyes turned to the young woman. She'd become the fixer, the one called when systems broke. But this time, the CEO pointed at a senior developer. You're leading this, the developer smirked. Finally, a real challenge. The young woman said nothing, but her chest tightened. Why not me? That night, her son spiked a fever. She paced the cramped apartment, rocking him while scanning the client's code on her laptop. The senior developer's updates flashed in the team chat. Progress slow, firewalls too complex. Her son whimpered, his forehead burning. She sang lullabies, her voice steady even as her mind raced. At 3 a.m., he finally slept. She opened the client's code, curiosity overriding exhaustion. The problem was worse than she'd imagined. Gaps in encryption, lazy shortcuts. She scribbled, notes on a napkin, ideas forming. But this wasn't her project. Stay in your lane, she told herself. The next day, chaos erupted. The senior developer slammed his desk. It's impossible. Their system's a time bomb. The CEO stormed over. You had one job. It's not my fault their code's garbage. The young woman hovered nearby, clutching her napkin of scribbles. The CEO caught her eye. Something to add? All heads turned. I might have ideas, she said quietly. The senior developer scoffed. Ideas won't save this dumpster fire. The CEO crossed her arms. Try me. The young woman hesitated, then projected her screen. They're using outdated authentication. But here, she highlighted a patchwork section. We can reroute through a sandbox environment, Isolate the weak points before rebuilding. The room buzzed. That'd take weeks, the developer argued. Or 3 days, she said. If we automate the isolation, the CEO leaned in. Can you do it? Yes. Prove it. For 48 hours, she became a ghost in the office. Coffee cups piled up. Her son stayed with a neighbor, the first time she'd ever left him overnight. Guilt gnawed at her, but the CEO's words echoed. Make them need you. At dawn on pitch day, she uploaded the final patch. The client's platform glowed on. Her screen. Secure, sleek, reborn. The CEO arrived early, finding her asleep at her desk, head resting on a keyboard. A half-drawn dinosaur from her son peeked out from under her arm. Wake up, the CEO said, not unkindly. You're presenting. The young woman jerked upright. But the senior developer is stuck in traffic. Move. In the boardroom. Executives in tailored suits frowned at her wrinkled clothes and messy bun. She ignored them, clicking through her slides. Your security wasn't broken, she began. It was asleep. She demonstrated her fix, live on, the client system. No crashes, no breaches. A client interrupted. Who approved this approach? The CEO stepped forward. I did. Problem? Silence. Then, the lead client nodded. We're in. Afterward, the young woman collapsed in a stairwell, trembling. The CEO found her there. You're shaking. I didn't eat, forgot. The CEO tossed her a protein bar. You'll pass out at the celebration. Celebration? You won, didn't you? The CEO paused. Your son okay? The question startled her. He has a fever. I should have been there. You're here. He'll understand. How? The CEO's mask slipped, just for a second. Mine did. A janitor's radio hummed nearby, breaking the moment. The CEO straightened. Take tomorrow off. Paid. But that's an order. At home, her son slept peacefully, his fever gone. She curled beside him, tears soaking her pillow. Not from sadness, but relief. She'd survived. Her phone buzzed. A photo from the CEO, the client's signed contract with a scribbled note. Don't get used to days off. She smiled, drifting into the first deep sleep she'd had in years. The celebration party buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. Technova's office had been transformed. String lights hung from the ceiling, and a banner read, Thank you, team, in bold letters. The young woman stood near the snack table, feeling out of place in her thrift store dress. She'd never been to a corporate party before. Her son tugged her hand, wide-eyed at the cupcakes piled high on a tray. Can I have one, Mama? The blue one, she smiled. Just one, okay? As he devoured the cupcake, frosting smeared on his cheeks, she scanned the room. The CEO stood across the floor, surrounded by executives. Their eyes met briefly. The CEO gave a small nod, a rare gesture of approval. Then a voice boomed over the microphone. Time to honor the star of the hour. The crowd clapped as the senior developer stepped forward, grinning. Thanks to my team, we nailed the client's project. The young woman froze. His team? She'd worked alone for 48 hours while he'd, been stuck in traffic. Her son looked up. Mama, why's that man lying? Shh, baby, she whispered, her face burning. The CEO suddenly snatched the microphone. Enough. The room fell silent. The only person stuck in traffic, the CEO said, glaring at the developer, was you. While she saved this company's neck. Again. She turned to the young woman. Get up here. Panic surged. Public speaking? No. She'd rather debug code blindfolded. But her son pushed her forward. Go, Mama. At the podium, the spotlight felt like an interrogation lamp. The CEO handed her the mic. Tell them how you did it. Her throat dried. She glanced at her son, now dancing to the background music, oblivious to her fear. For him, she thought. Always for him. I just fixed what was broken. she said quietly. Louder, the CEO ordered. She gripped the mic. The client's system was a mess, but so am I most days. A few nervous chuckles. I'm late to meetings, I forget to eat, my kids' drawings are all over my desk. She pointed at her son, who waved a frosting-covered hand. The crowd melted. But when something's broken, she continued, I don't see mess. I see puzzles, pieces waiting to fit. Maybe that's what we all are, broken pieces. But when you put us together, the CEO finished her sentence. You get something better than before. The room erupted in applause. The young woman stepped back, dizzy. The CEO muttered, not bad for a first speech. Later, as the party wound down, the CEO cornered her near the elevators. You're being promoted. What? Lead developer. New team, double the pay. The words blurred. Lead developer. Health insurance. A real savings account. She could finally buy her son a bed instead of the mattress on the floor. Why? She asked. The CEO studied her. Because you're exactly what this place needs. Someone who doesn't quit. I almost did. Last week, when my son's daycare called about tuition. I know, she blinked. How? The CEO pulled out her phone, showing a donation receipt. Anonymous gift to Little Sprouts Daycare. That was you? Tax write-off, the CEO said flatly, but her eyes betrayed. Don't make it weird. The elevator dinged. The young woman's son ran over, clutching a stolen cupcake. Mama, can we go home? I'm sleepy. The CEO crouched to his eye level, something no one had ever seen her do. Your mom's a superhero, kid. He grinned. I know. Weeks later, the promotion brought new challenges. Her team respected her skills but bristled at her messy desk, her chaotic schedule. You can't bring your kid to meetings, argued a manager when her son colored quietly in the corner during a brainstorm. Why not, she said. He's quieter than you. The CEO backed her, but tension simmered. Then, disaster struck. A leaked email accused her of stealing credit for the client project. Anonymous complaints piled up, unprofessional, distracted, a liability. HR called her in. We have to investigate, they said. She sat in the sterile office, fists clenched. I did the work, everyone knows it. But the optics, HR sighed. The mud incident. Bringing your child here, it's unconventional. Since when is unconventional a crime? They had no answer. That night she cried for the first time in years. Her son wiped her tears with his tiny hands. Don't be sad, Mama, we'll fix it. She hugged him. Some things can't be fixed, baby. But he was right. The next morning, she arrived to find her team gathered in the lobby. The senior developer stood front and center, holding a petition. Her heart sank. This is it. They're firing me. But then he spoke. We're not letting them push you out. The team had signed a letter demanding her reinstatement. Even the engineer who'd mocked her mud-stained clothes. You're annoying, he said. But you're right. Always. The CEO appeared, holding a single sheet of paper. HR's complaint file. Want to burn it? The young woman laughed, exhausted. Just make it stop. It stopped, the CEO said. I fired the complainers. What? Why? They lacked vision. You? The CEO handed her a new contract. Your vision. The title took her breath away. Director of Innovation. At home, her son drew a picture of her new office. A stick figure with a giant crown labeled Mama CEO. She pinned it to the fridge next to his daycare artwork. Her phone buzzed. The CEO had texted a photo of her own fridge, a decades-old crayon drawing of a woman in a suit labeled Mommy. No, other words needed. The crisis hit on a Thursday. A video spread online. Technova's banking software had glitched, freezing accounts for thousands of customers. Angry tweets flooded in. Where's my rent money? Scammers? The board demanded answers. The CEO, usually unshakable, paled as she slammed a newspaper on the conference table. Technova robs families, the headline screamed. Fix this, the CEO ordered, her voice strained, or we're all out of jobs. The young woman worked, through the night, her team scrambling beside her. At 3 a.m., her son stirred on the pillows. "Mama, my stomach hurts." She carried him to the office kitchen, rubbing his back as he threw up. A passing intern sneered. "Can't even handle a kid," her son cried. She cried. But by sunrise, she'd found the bug, a single line of corrupted code. "Push the update," she told her team, voice raw. The lead engineer hesitated. "What if it crashes everything?" She handed him her son's half-finished juice box. "Then we'll fix that too." The update worked. Accounts unfroze. Apology emails rolled out. But the damage was done. At the emergency press conference, the CEO stood stiffly at the podium, her speech slurring. "We regret the error," reporters shouted. "How can you guarantee this won't happen again?" The CEO gripped the podium, knuckles white. The young woman watched from the wings, her son clutching her leg. Something was wrong. Then the CEO swayed. The young woman lunged, catching her just as she collapsed. In the hospital, machines beeped rhythmically. The CEO lay in bed, IV in her arm, looking smaller than ever. "Stress-induced stroke," the doctor said. "She'll recover but needs rest, no work." The CEO glared. "I'm fine." "You're not," the young woman snapped. For the first time, fear outweighed respect. "What happens to the company?" "To us?" The CEO sighed. "You'll handle..." "Chorse me? The board hates me." "Good. Means you'll scare them." The CEO handed her a USB drive. "Password's my son's birthday, 10/14/1992. The young woman froze. "You have a son?" The CEO turned toward the window. "Had. He's gone. No details, no tears. Just 3 words that hung in the air like smoke." Back at the office, the USB revealed secrets, hidden debts, boardroom schemes, a plan to sell the company. The young woman sat in the dark, her son asleep under her desk. The next morning, she called an all-hands meeting. Employees packed the room, murmuring nervously. She stepped onto the stage, her son's tiny hand in hers. "You know me," she began. "The mud girl. The mom who brings her kid to work. The unconventional director." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. She projected the CEO's files onto the screen. "Some of you wanted her gone. Well, you got it. Now they're coming for the rest of us." Gasps erupted as she revealed the board's plans. Layoffs, selling user data, killing their free childcare app. "We can't stop them," shouted a manager. "Yes, we can," she said, "by doing what we've always done, fixing broken systems." Her son tugged her sleeve. "Like my robot?" He held up a toy, a broken plastic robot with mismatched parts. She smiled. "Exactly. Even broken things can fight." The rebellion started quietly. Engineers rerouted servers to hide key projects. Designers leaked the board's plans to the media. The young woman met with lawyers, her son coloring on the floor of the courthouse. The board retaliated. Security cleared her desk. Access badges deactivated, but they underestimated her team. The night before the shareholder vote, her apartment buzzed with coders, marketers, and interns, all working for free. Pizza boxes piled up. Her son passed out cookies. "Why are they helping us?" she asked the lead engineer. He shrugged. "You fixed my mom's account during the glitch. She's got dementia. You saved her life savings." At midnight, they launched their counterattack. A public website exposing the board's lies, backed by every scrap of data the CEO had hidden. By morning, Yurshkir Save Tech Nova trended worldwide. At the shareholder meeting, the young woman walked in, wearing jeans and a Technova hoodie. Her son waited outside with the receptionist playing with his robot. The board chairman smirked. "No children allowed." "Good," she said. "Then you shouldn't be here." She presented her case, not with slides, but with stories. The single dad who'd coded their childcare app between night shifts. The intern who'd slept in her car to afford rent. The CEO lying in a hospital bed, fighting to protect them. "You call us a liability," she finished. "But we're the ones who fix your messes. Fire us and who'll save you next time." The vote was unanimous. The board was dissolved. That night, she visited the CEO's hospital room. "We won." The CEO eyed her hoodie. "You look terrible. Learned from the best?" A faint smile. "My son. He'd have liked you." "What happened to him?" The CEO's voice cracked. "Car accident. I was at work." The young woman reached for her hand. Words failed, but silence spoke louder. In the hallway, her son waited with a drawing. 2 stick figures, one with gray hair, labeled Grandma CEO. "For her," he said. The CEO hung it beside her bed. It stayed there until she walked out weeks later, arm in arm with the woman who'd once been just the mud girl, now stepping into her shadow. The CEO returned to work slowly, her cane tapping against the office floors like a metronome. She no longer stormed through meetings but observed from the sidelines, her sharp eyes tracking every move. The young woman, now acting CEO in all, but title, felt the weight of her gaze constantly. Am I doing this right? Her desk overflowed with new problems. Union negotiations, patent lawsuits, a viral TikTok accusing Technova of selling robot souls. Her son, now in 1st grade, left sticky notes on her laptop. "Mama, don't forget my soccer game." She never missed a game. Even if it meant coding in the bleachers, her fingers flying across her phone between cheers. One evening, the CEO limped into her office. "You're burning out." "I'm fine," the young woman said, rubbing her temples. A migraine pulsed behind her eyes. Liar. The CEO tossed her a stress ball shaped like a cartoon brain. "I did the same thing. Pushed until I broke." "Don't." "Easy for you to say. You didn't have a kid." The CEO's grip tightened on her cane. "No, I had regrets instead." The words lingered heavy. The young woman softened. "What do I do?" "Share the load, before it crushes you." The next day, she did something unthinkable. She gathered her team and admitted, "I need help." Silence. Then laughter. "You? The human fix-it machine?" joked the lead engineer. "Even machines need oil," she said, tossing him the stress ball. "Who wants to lead the TikTok crisis?" Hands shot up. The intern who'd once mocked her raised hers highest. "I know. Their algorithm. My sister's an influencer." Done. Piece by piece, she let go. The union talks went to a single mom from HR. The patents to a quiet coder who'd been overlooked for years. "What if they fail?" the CEO asked, watching her delegate. "Then we'll fix it together," she said. But one burden couldn't be shared. Her son's teacher called. "He's falling asleep in class. Says he waits up for you." Guilt twisted her gut. That night she left work at sunset for the first time in months. They ate pizza on the floor of their apartment, a picnic under a blanket fort. "Mama," he mumbled, sauce smeared on his cheek. "Why do you work so much?" She tucked him into bed. "To make things better. For you. For everyone." "But what if?" He yawned. "What if better is just being here?" She stayed awake long after he slept, his question echoing. The answer came in flames. A fire alarm blared at 3 a.m. Their building's faulty wiring finally gave out. She scooped up her son, fleeing down smoky stairs. Firefighters found them, shivering on the curb, her laptop clutched like a lifeline. "We've been complaining about those wires for months," a neighbor spat, "but the landlord ignored us." Her son coughed into her sleeve. "You can fix it, Mama. Right?" She stared at the burning building, at the families huddled on the street. This was a system that couldn't be debugged with code. The next morning, she marched into Technova with soot in her hair and fury in her veins. "We're building housing." The board squirmed. "We're a tech company, we're a people company," she snapped. "Or did you forget?" The CEO stood silencing the room. "Do it." The project consumed her. She met with architects, activists, even the firefighters who'd saved them. Her son drew blueprints of robot houses with slide exits and cookie dispensers. "Priorities?" the lead architect asked. "Safety, community, kids," she said. Ground broke on the first building 6 months later. Families from the fire joined her, tossing shovels of dirt like confetti. Her son wore a tiny hard hat, grinning. "Proud of you," the CEO murmured beside her. "Not done yet," she said. But for once, the weight felt light. At the ribbon cutting, reporters asked, "Why housing?" She gestured to her son chasing friends through the courtyard. "Tech builds futures, but futures need foundations." The quote went viral. Donations poured in. Cities begged for partnerships. Yet her favorite moment was unseen. A single mom moving into apartment 302, crying as she unlocked the door. No mold, no rats, just sunlight. That night, the CEO handed her a key. "My cabin, up north. Take your kid. Breathe." "I can't just—" "You saved this company, saved me. Now let someone save you." The cabin was small, creaky, perfect. She fished with her son, misread maps, burned pancakes, forgot emails. On their last morning, he found a dusty box in the closet. Inside were photos of a boy, the CEO's son, building sandcastles, blowing birthday candles. A life frozen in time. "He looks like me," her son said. She hugged him tight. "He'd have loved you." Back at work, the CEO noticed the box's absence, said nothing, just placed a new photo on her desk, her cabin key, now tied with a ribbon from her son's hard hat. The young woman hung it beside his drawings. A reminder, some fixes aren't in code, but in letting go. Years blurred into seasons. The housing project grew into a movement. Cities replaced slums with solar-paneled homes, schools bloomed in tech deserts, and the young woman's face graced magazine covers. But her proudest title remained Mama, scribbled in crayon on Father's Day cards her son insisted on making. The CEO's cane now stayed propped in the corner of her office, unused. Her hair whitened, her steps slowed, but her glare could still silence a boardroom. One autumn morning she called the young woman in. "Sit," she said, tossing a folder on the desk. "I'm retiring." The words hung like dust in sunlight. "When?" "Tomorrow." The young woman laughed nervously. "You don't retire, you haunt." The CEO smirked. "Smart, but even ghosts need rest." She slid the folder closer. "Sign this." Inside were ownership papers. The company, the cabin, everything. "I can't." "You can." "You will." The CEO softened. "I held on too long once, don't make my mistakes." The gala was the CEO's idea. "A party," she'd grumbled. "Waste of time, but people expect it." Balloons filled the office. Employees wore cocktail dresses and awkward smiles. The young woman lingered near the exit, her son tugging her sleeve. "Mama, can we leave? It's boring." "Soon," she promised. The CEO took the stage, her voice crackling over the mic. "I've led this company for 30 years, made enemies, made history. Now I'm making room." She pointed to the young woman. "Her turn." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. The young woman's son covered his ears. "Go on," the CEO muttered, nudging her forward. At the podium, the young woman froze. Her son's hand slipped into hers. "Hi," she said, voice trembling. "I'm not good at speeches, but my kid says I'm good at fixing stuff, so here's my first fix as CEO, no more galas." Laughter rippled. "Parties are for celebrating people, not profits, so let's do that." She nodded to security. The doors swung open. Families streamed in, single parents from the housing projects, students who'd used her free coding apps, firefighters, nurses, teachers. The room buzzed with real laughter, sticky fingers grabbing cupcakes, toddlers dancing to the band. The CEO watched from the shadows. "Show off." The young woman found her later alone on the rooftop. "You planned this," the CEO said. "You left the folder open, saw the guest list. Cheater." They stood in silence, the city lights stretching below. "I'm scared," the young woman admitted. "Good. Means you'll care." The CEO handed her a flash drive. "Last gift. Don't open it until I'm gone." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere sunny. where no one asks me to fix their printer. They hugged, brief, awkward, enough. The first month as CEO was chaos. Hackers attacked. Investors revolted. Her son started middle school, slamming doors and rolling eyes. One night she found him crying at the kitchen table, a failed math test crumpled in his fist. "I'm dumb," he muttered. She knelt beside him. "You're my kid, which means you're stubborn, creative, and terrible at asking for help." He half smiled. "Like you?" "Exactly. Now let's fix this." They worked through equations until dawn, peanut butter smudges on the homework. The CEO's flash drive stayed buried in her desk. Until the day the stock market crashed. Reporters camped outside shouting, "Will Technova survive?" Her team panicked. "We need layoffs. Cut the housing funds." She locked herself in her office, opened the drive, and found a video. The CEO sat in her cabin, fireplace crackling. "Knew you'd wait until now, stubborn kid. Listen, companies fall, buildings burn. But this," she held up a photo of their old office lobby, the young woman's muddy first-day footprints still faint on the tiles. "This matters. The mess, the fight, the people you lift. Now go be great." The video ended. She dried her eyes, then called her team. "No layoffs, no cuts. We sell the private jets instead. But the investors will stay for the long haul. Or leave. We build anyway." At the next shareholder meeting, she brought her son. He sat in the front row, doodling robots in the margins of her speech. "We're not just a company," she said. "We're proof that broken systems can heal. That moms in muddy clothes can outcode suits. That kids," she glanced at her son, "kids can teach us more than any algorithm." The room clapped. Her son rolled his eyes. "Cheesy, mama," but he saved the speech in his notebook. The CEO's first post-retirement email arrived that spring, a photo of her on a beach, scowling under a floppy hat. Subject line, "Stop working. Swim." The young woman framed it next to her son's drawings. Years later, when her own hair silvered and her son took the stage as Technova's new director, she finally understood. Legacy wasn't in the code, the buildings, or the titles. It was in the boy who'd once waited under desks, now speaking confidently about ethical tech. It was in the employees who'd once mocked her, now mentoring single parents in coding. Boot camps. It was in the CEO's cane, still propped in the corner, reminding her to walk forward, but never alone. Decades later, on a crisp autumn morning, an old woman stood outside a gleaming office tower. Her hair was silver, her hands weathered, but her eyes still sparkled with mischief. Beside her, a young boy tugged her sleeve. "Grandma, why are we here?" she smiled. "To finish a story." Inside, the lobby buzzed with employees. No one recognized her, just another visitor in a sea of faces. But the security guard paused. "Wait, are you?" She winked. "Just here for the tour." The elevator rose to the top floor. The boy gasped at the city view. "It's like a spaceship." A door opened. A man in his 30s stepped out, his tie slightly crooked. His eyes widened. "Grandma?" She hugged him tight. "Look at you. CEO suit and everything." He laughed. "Still hate ties." The office hadn't changed much. Framed crayon drawings hung beside high-tech blueprints. A faded stress ball shaped like a brain sat on the desk, and in the corner an old cane leaned against the wall, dusty but untouched. The boy pointed. "What's that?" The CEO, her grandson, picked it up. A reminder. To walk forward, but never alone. She traced the handle, memories flooding. Back. "She'd have loved you." He nodded. "I know." Later, as they toured the building, they passed a glass-walled interview room. Inside, a young woman sat nervously. Her clothes were stained with paint, her hair tied in a messy bun. The old woman froze. "Wait." Her grandson followed her gaze. "New candidate, artist applying for our design team. Her bus broke down. She biked here." The old woman stepped closer. The interviewer's stern faces mirrored ones she'd known long ago. The young woman clenched her portfolio. hand-painted app interfaces, community mural photos. She's perfect, the old woman whispered. Her grandson smiled. Let's see. He entered the room, startling the panel. Mind if I join? The young woman stared. You're the CEO? He sat beside her. Tell me about your work. She hesitated, then spilled her story, working night shifts to a Ford art school, teaching kids in shelters to paint, dreaming of tech that felt human, not cold. The old woman watched from the doorway, tears in her eyes. History doesn't repeat. It rhymes. After the interview, the CEO offered his hand. You're hired. The young woman blinked. Just like that? He pointed to his grandmother in the hall. She taught me to spot fighters. Welcome to the team. As they walked away, the boy tugged his grandma's hand. Was that you? When you were young? She laughed. Worse. I was covered in mud. Night. The CEO brought his family to the old housing project, now a thriving neighborhood. Kids raced through gardens where burned buildings once stood. An elderly woman waved from her porch. Brought the gang, huh? He hugged her. Wouldn't miss book club. Inside the community center, toddlers coded robots alongside grandparents. The old woman's grandson, the boy, raced to join them. He's just like you, the CEO said. She shook her head. Better. At sunset, they visited the cemetery. Flowers rested against a headstone etched with a single phrase. Here lies a CEO, a mother, and a pain in the neck. The old woman placed a toy robot beside it. You were right, you know. The best ideas do come messy. Her grandson laid down a crayon drawing from the new hire. Fresh eyes, like you said. Wind chimes sang as they left. Somewhere, a laugh, echoed sharp, warm, unforgettable. Years later, when the old woman passed peacefully in her sleep, the city mourned. News channels replayed her story, the mud-stained interview, the housing revolution, the boy who became a legend. But her funeral wasn't sad. Former employees sang off-key coding parodies. Grandkids told stories of pillow forts and hacked toasters. The original CEO's cane was passed to a teen girl from the projects, now interning at Technova. And as the crowd dispersed, a young artist approached the grave. She placed a painted rock there, a swirling mix of mud brown and gold. Thanks, she whispered, for seeing me. Back at the office, the CEO, still tieless, found a note on his desk. His grandmother's handwriting, left you one last bug to fix, check the daycare. He raced downstairs. There, in the lobby, sat a life-sized statue, the old woman, frozen mid-laugh, one hand holding her grandson's tiny hand, the other, extended toward the future. At its base, a plaque read, Walk boldly, get muddy, lift others, repeat.